Under Arizona law, a couple's community property that earned or acquired during the marriage cannot be used to satisfy a debt that is a sole and separate debt of one of the spouses. The law in Arizona also specifies that if a spouse owed money before the marriage, the other spouse's separate property cannot be taken to pay for it after the marriage. The Arizona Supreme Court, in the case of Forsyth versus Pascal, discussed whether marital property may be used to pay for the separate debts of one spouse incurred prior to the marriage. Wife had incurred debt prior to the party's marriage. She stopped making payments on that debt, and the creditor sued both husband and wife. The focus of the Arizona Supreme Court was on how the relevant Arizona law should be interpreted. The law provides that the separate property of the husband or wife shall not be liable for the debts of the other contracted prior to marriage. Now, the creditor argued that law specifically talks about separate property of a spouse not being liable for separate debts before marriage, but he argued it does not say that the couple's community property cannot be held liable for the separate debt of one of the spouses. He argued that the court should hold that when the legislature specifies one thing very clearly, a court must assume that all other things are excluded. Here, the legislature specified that a spouse's separate property could not be used to satisfy the other spouse's premarital debt, but it did not mention whether community property could be used. Wife's creditor further argued the court must read the law as allowing community property to be used to satisfy the pre-marriage debts of a spouse. The Court of Appeals declined to adopt that approach. In doing so, the Court of Appeals noted that another Arizona law provides that the community property of the husband and wife shall be liable for the community debts contracted by the husband during the marriage, except in such cases are specifically accepted by law. The Arizona Supreme Court noted that the specific statement that community property is liable for community debts contracted by the husband during marriage would mean that the community property could not be liable for any other debts. Since the application of that maxim would result in contradictory results, the Arizona Court of Appeals chose to interpret the law so that it reflected the meaning of marriage under Arizona laws. It cited many cases for the proposition that Arizona's principal aim in regulating marriage is to protect the family as a unit. The court noted that few things would more rapidly destroy the solidarity of family life and the proper maintenance of the children of the marriage than allowing the community estate intended for this protection to be used to satisfy debts that are not connected with the family. Since the destruction of the solidarity of the family is against public policy in Arizona, the court ruled that unless the legislature makes a clear law allowing it, a creditor of one spouse may not enforce a judgment for an individual debt against the property of the community.